Okay, and we're back. So when we left off, we were just talking about your decision to go accept a job out in Virginia.
Yes, Sterling, Virginia.
Yeah.
35 miles south, or, I think it was northwest of Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm.
All right. So
Monica and Stephen Ward, and they had two little boys, Eric and Gregory, and Andrew. Andrew and Gregory were 5 years old, and they were twins, and Eric was 2. And I flew out, and Monica said that she was raised in Minnesota, and she wanted somebody with Midwest values. That's why she advertised there in Bismarck. So I flew out there, and it was an adjustment getting used to them and getting used to the area and everything, but I started to get to know the neighbors. They were living in a townhouse, waiting to buy a house, and they were both working at Nordstrom's. He was a maintenance man, and she was a higher up. I don't know what she did, but anyway, they needed somebody like 12-hour days, and so I had a little room to myself, and I took care of the boys during the day, and I started to get to know the neighbors. Most of the neighbors were black people, which was new to me because we hardly had any in Bismarck. And the ones that I got to meet were Christians, and they went to a great church. And so they invited me to their church, and that was the best part about my whole trip. I mean, I loved the boys, and I loved taking care of them, and the Wards were good to me. And but that church, I mean, it was all black except for the minister and his wife, and the music and the praise and worship and everything about it was spectacular, like something I'd never been involved in before. And they just took me in and loved on me and treated me really, really good. And so I really look forward to that, and I made some friends there. And then they moved into the house in Sterling, very nice house, and Monica enjoyed decorating it. And on my days off, I'd take the metro into Washington, D.C. and be the tourist around Washington, D.C. And it was scary at first, but I got used to it. And sometimes Monica would leave me her car, and I'd go drive through the Blue Ridge Mountains and look at all the beauty up there, and on a day off. And that was really, really nice. After I was there about a year and a half, the crime rate got really bad. People were cars that were stopped, they would pull their door open and pull them out and steal their cars. And that was happening all the time. And the fast pace of living and everything, I just really missed home. And even though I had a great job, and the little kids were really attached to me after a year and a half, and but I decided to go home. I decided to buy a brand new car, a Geo Metro, 1990. Well, that would have been
it was a
93. 93,
Yeah.
yeah. And my girlfriend Pat came out on the bus, and she drove back with me. I put all my stuff in the back of the car, and we drove back together, which was a fun trip. And I'll never forget Gregory and Andrew. They were, I suppose, 7 when I left. And they called me up after I got home. I don't know how they got a hold of my phone number, but they called me up and crying and begging me to come back. They said their new nanny was mean to them and wasn't nice and hollered at them. And it just broke my heart. I couldn't believe it. But I told them I couldn't come back. And anyway, and the church that I was going to gave me a going away party and gifts and a cake and the whole bit. They were just really, really nice to me. And it was, like I said, a very positive experience. But when I got back, I knew that I wanted to continue to be a nanny, but I wanted to wait on the Lord to find me a job. And so I proceeded to look, and 2 months went by, and my bills were waiting to be paid, and I didn't have any money coming in. I was staying with Mom, and I finally got an interview to go to a nanny position, and I went to it, and I knew that I wasn't supposed to be at that job. It just wasn't for me, but I had to have money. And so I was supposed to go to the job, and I just got down on my knees. I was supposed to accept the job or decline the job is what it was. And I got down on my knee. Oh no, I'm getting ahead of myself. I had an interview with Boone Cupcho and his mother and father-in-law and the 2 little children who were 3 and 5, Kelsey and Noah. And I knew I was supposed to be at that job, but they never called me. And then I had another interview coming up that I was had to take if I didn't hear from those people, because like I said, it had been 2 months and I had bills piling up. And so I got down on my knees in the basement by the bed, and I just said, Lord, I got to take this job if I don't hear from Boone Cupcho. And within 30 seconds, the phone rang, and Boone asked me to work for him. So I knew I was supposed to be there. And so they wanted me to live in their home. Their mother, the wife, had killed herself in the basement with a shotgun. Just a young woman, and left the family alone. And the whole family was just, everybody was so depressed, especially the grandparents. They were the parents of the daughter that killed herself. And so it was very emotionally stressful to go into that family, but it was a beautiful home up in Hazen, North Dakota, and I moved in, and Boone was from Black Duck, Minnesota. He was a lumberjack, and he worked at the power plant, working a huge shovel that you take an elevator to get up into, and very manly man. That he went out and hunted deer and elk and fished, had a cabin at the lake, and was just liked by everybody. And of course, being his wife killed herself, he was going through an emotional state. I think they were all still in shock. But I just latched onto those kids immediately, and I remember the first night tucking them into bed and praying with them, talking to them about Jesus, and I just, it was just meant to be. And so I just became mom to them for 4 years, and we had a really good time together. And I would drive down on my weekends off, and when I had a weekend off, sometimes Boone would have to go somewhere or something, and I wouldn't have the weekend off. But if I did, then I'd drive down to Bismarck, and Mike and his family was living there at that time, weren't you?
Well,
By 93 or 4.
well, no, I didn't get married till 94, so, but,
Oh, okay. Well, I guess it was later on that you guys were there, after Sarah was born.
but I'm trying to think, so I don't know if it was a visit home, because when I brought Martha home, to introduce her to you and Grandma and tell you guys we'd gotten engaged.
That was in 94.
That was in 94, and you were there at Grandma's. You were sleeping in your room there, so I don't know if
I
you
must
were
have been
home
home
for the
for a
weekend,
weekend,
or
yeah.
something.
Yeah, because I was
so-
up at Boone's by 93, because I was
Yeah.
there for 4 years.
Okay.
So I would have been on a day
Yeah.
off, I suppose. But anyway, that was a wonderful experience. I learned how to cook wild meat, elk and deer and all that stuff. I had to cook all the meals and do all the laundry and just cleaning the house and everything. And I just settled in just like it was my house. And I planted the gardens. He had 2 or 3 patches out in the back of the garden, a huge yard. And when he would get really sad or anxious, he would go out to the lumber pile and he would chop wood for an hour or 2 and work it off. And he had a combine or a tractor or something. He would plant seed in the field behind the house. And I remember one year he planted sunflowers. It was so beautiful. And just a real nice guy. And didn't have a lot of time for his kids. And I figured he was going through his own hell after losing his wife that way. But they were churchgoers to the Lutheran church, and the kids started school a couple of years after that. And I would have my days to do my own thing and clean the house and cook and stuff. And I got to be friends with their friends, and it was just a very pleasant 4 years, although it was extremely emotionally stressful because one of the things, Kelsey had asthma real bad. And some nights I'd be up a couple of times with her breathing treatment because she'd wake up and couldn't breathe. And all the time I was teaching them about Jesus and how much he loved them and stuff, and trying to answer their questions. And it was just a real learning experience. But being I had lived up in Hazen back in the 80s, I had friends there yet, and I went to the Beulah Assembly of God Church over in Beulah at that time, because the Stanton Church, Gary Kalmbach, the pastor I liked so much, had left at that time. So I went to Beulah, and Pat Haas and I continued to be friends, and we go out and pick choke cherries and just go to the lake, to the cabin, and things like that. And I remember in the winter time we went up to the cabin, and there was a huge hill by the lake in front of the cabin, so the kids and I went sledding down the hill. There was lots of snow, and we had a lot of fun times together. But then Boone met one of the ladies, the administrator at the hospital's wife. She had 2 little girls, and he divorced her. And so he met her at church, and they decided to get married and combine their households. So I was told that I wouldn't be needed anymore. That was really, really hard to leave the kids, because we were all very attached to each other. But then I was so shocked by having to leave and everything that I just took the first job that came available, which I don't think I was meant to be there, because I didn't wait on the Lord to provide my job. I went to work for Dr. Peterson, Lynn and Greg Peterson in Bismarck. They had a big mansion on the south side of Bismarck on the river, and they had a brand new baby. And so I just went there, and I lived with Mom and would drive to work every day, and they were nice people, but I was working 12-hour days too. I worked for them from 1997 to 2001, I think, yeah. Wait a minute, 97, no, it must have been till 2000 because I was with them 3 years. And I got married to Charlie. I met Charlie at church. And I was going to New Song and he was there. And I met a Bible study actually before meeting him at church. But anyway, they were at my wedding, and their daughter, Sarah, and Maddie were both flower girls, weren't they?
At your wedding.
And
yeah.
Colin was
Yeah.
the ring bearer,
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
So
When we get
before
there.
we go into Charlie, because we kind of bypassed some stuff here.
I was just waiting for a question
okay.
from you.
Oh, okay. Going back to 1994, like we mentioned, I brought Martha, introduced her to the family. What was your feeling upon finding out that the first one of your children was going to get married?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I mean, after Ebony, I loved her. I mean, that was such a horrible deal when you brought Ebony and when you got rid of her and met this nice down-home girl. It was wonderful.
And so, and then a little over a year later, your first grandchild was born, and that was Sarah.
Well, you had a wedding.
Well, yeah, we had a wedding. Yeah, we did. But
And Rick and your dad were both there.
yeah,
That was nice.
yeah, that was in July of '94, but anyway, I wanted to get to Sarah's being born, which was
A year later.
July of '95,
Yeah.
and you came out.
Fargo.
We were still living in Fargo.
You had an apartment there.
Fargo was where we met and got married and lived there till shortly after Sarah was born.
I suppose I was on a weekend off from Cup Shows, so I drove out there.
Yeah. So, just talk a moment about how your experience or how you felt about going out to be present at the birth of your first grandchild.
Oh, it was so long ago. I'm sure I was ecstatic about it. I mean, why wouldn't I be? But I don't remember the hospital or the birth so much. That memory isn't there so much. It's the time that I drove out and she was just crawling and we played all over the apartment. I was chasing her around on the floor and stuff, and that memory stands out in my mind. I had such a ball with her, and but remembering the birth, was it on a weekend so I could get away?
Well, I'm pretty sure you were there. It seems to me you were.
I just don't have memory of it.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I better ask Martha. I don't know. I thought you were there, but I know you were there when Becca was born. But that was here at Bismarck. I don't know. I'm not sure. So anyway, so you got your first grandchild.
And a little girl, and I never had any girls.
Yeah. And then, and then the next year, '96, your other son, Rick, gets married.
Yeah, and I
So-
flew out there.
Yeah, we all flew out there for that.
Well, for the wedding,
Yeah,
they had
yeah.
a beautiful wedding on the beach at Clearwater, and that was beautiful. And Mom and everybody was there. Chuck made it too, didn't
Yeah,
he?
he was there.
Yeah. And they had Colin. And I remember flying out there when he was it was at Christmas time. He was maybe a week or two old, and I had a cold, and I gave it to the baby, and the baby had to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
I was just mortified. I was so upset that I had given that newborn a cold. That'll always stand out in my mind. That happened.
Yeah.
But he got over it.
Yeah. So I just wanted to establish some of those things because we were getting to the
Yeah.
end of the 90s there, and there was a lot of things that happened there in the 90s. You
Oh,
became
yeah.
a grandmother, you know.
Twice.
Well, actually 3 times before the 90s was over, because Becca
Well.
was born in 99, so.
Right. And then when you got married, you also had a son.
Yeah, we, I guess, I don't know, inherited, or how you'd put it, but Martha already had a son, so.
Joseph was 4 when you got married, right?
So we had Joseph too, so you got another grandchild out of that deal, so. So yeah, one thing that definitely happened in the 90s is that you went from being a mother to being a grandmother, and to 4 children, and so times changed a little bit.
And I was living with Mom when I worked for the Petersons, and from 77 on.
97.
97, sorry. Yeah. And a lot of things happen, but it's hard to remember them all. They're all probably in my journals in the bedroom.
Okay, now I'm thinking, now you said you met Charlie in 2000, right?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, it was before you met Charlie that you had the other mini stroke or whatever. And lost your memory.
In 97 I had another time of memory loss.
Yeah.
I had woke up one morning to go to Peterson's to work, and I thought I was working for the Hugheses, who I worked for in 1987. And I was confused. So I didn't go to work that day, but I never went to the doctor about it. It was really weird why I wouldn't do that.
Well, it was interesting, and I don't even know if you remember this, but whatever was going on that morning, you called me, and you were talking to me, but you weren't making intelligible words.
Really?
And I mean, I knew it was you, and that you were trying to say something. Sounded like you were really urgently trying to tell me something, but everything you were saying was just babble.
Gobbledygook.
Yeah, it wasn't. There was nothing intelligible, and it went on that way for, probably at least a minute or so of me telling you, Mom, I can't understand what you're saying, and then it's like it just slowly, gradually started to resolve itself, and little by little you started making sense, and
So what did I tell you?
well, you ended up telling me that something happened. Something's happened. You were very confused,
I remember coming upstairs
yeah.
and getting ready for work, and telling Mom that. Of course, I don't know if I talked gobbledygook to her too, but it was obviously a stroke, and I never went to the doctor about it.
Yeah.
That is really weird to me.
Yeah. And so I was in Bismarck by that time because me and my family moved to Bismarck in late '95 and remained there until the end of 2001. So you also had some of your family around in town. All right, so you were working for the Petersons, and now would be a good time, I guess, to go into the whole meeting Charlie
Fiasco.
however you want to put it.
Yeah, well, when I turned 50 in 1999, we went to the White Earth Lake and had a reunion, and it was Mom's 85th birthday at that time. That was really nice because all the family got together at the old lake where we used to go when we were kids to fish. And after I came back from that was on our birthday, um, I had gone to a Bible study with Betty because I was still going to New Song, and this man was there, and he was telling this sad story about how he'd been divorced and how his son Charlie had committed suicide in jail, and how his mother had died, and how he'd given his life to the Lord. And I came out of there telling her, that's the saddest testimony I've ever heard in my whole life. And then he was working at Ruth Meyer's, helping out there, part-time job, and he started coming to church. Art Fody, one of the elders, met him and was kind of helping him along, and he was coming to church, and he'd bring some of the residents from Ruth Meyer's along to the church, and he'd sit there with his head down in the chair, and I was just bubbling over. I was so full of the Spirit at that time and happy with the Lord and everything, and I just had resigned myself that I was never going to get married and that the Lord was my husband, and I was happy-go-lucky, and I started volunteering at the church more, and so when I saw him coming and sitting there so forlorn in the back of the church with his head down, I'd go up and I'd kneel in front of him and I'd look him in the eye and I'd say, well, welcome to church, Charlie. And I was just being friendly, trying to, bring him out of his sadness. And almost every Sunday he'd come and he'd sit like that, and I'd always make it a point to go greet him. And next thing you know, I get this phone call one day, and he asked me out. And my God, I hadn't been out with a man since 1974. I mean, scared the hell out of me. I said, no. I said, if you want to talk to me on the phone and be a friend, I'd gladly, but no. I was weighing like 272 pounds at the time, and I just thought, he must be out of his mind. So the next month I went to Weight Watchers, and I got very serious. I walked the golf course path every day, and I just got really serious and lost 35 pounds in like 6 months. And I remember in January of 2000 that we had a singles group at New Song, and he was there, and we were having a potluck, and I was cleaning up dishes with him in the kitchen, and he was making all of us laugh. We just laughed hysterically at him, and just had a really good time. And I saw a different side of him at that time, and I'd lost 35 pounds, and I was feeling a little better about myself, and he asked me out to a show. And that time I said yes. And so we met at the theater. He didn't pick me up or anything. We just met at the theater and went to the show together. And he was very sweet and held my hand and kissed me on the cheek before we left and parted after the show. And I was just gone. And that's all it took. I was just gone. And so, we started seeing each other, and my mom liked him, and he treated her really sweet, and was such a gentleman and everything, and I don't know, it went really fast, but he asked me to marry him, and I said sure, but I said we have to have counseling, every other week or something with the pastor. Got to make sure this is right. I wanted to do everything right, except I was seeing red flags all over the place, but I just kind of pushed them away. Didn't want to see him, and he told me he was quitting smoking. He just smoked one once in a while, and he just was a regular con man. He had me still wrapped around his little finger, And he had Pastor Larry wrapped around his little finger in counseling. He agreed to everything. And 7 months later, in August, we got married in the park down at Sibley Park. And it was beautiful. It was exactly the type of wedding I wanted. Mike married me, and Jim sang Our Father, and Nancy Christensen played the piano, and Rick was taking pictures, and Johnny was making dinner, and Mom was there, and all my friends, and all the kids and people that I had been nanny for, and just about 100 people. We had a wonderful meal and a wonderful wedding, and everything was perfect. And Johnny even let us drive out to Eau Claire and stay at his cabin for our honeymoon. I think we took 4 or 5 days, and everything was perfect for a short time.
Yeah. Well, and I had red flags about that too. You know, when you asked me to perform the ceremony,
I know.
I was really hesitant to do it because I had a lot of misgivings about Charlie. And I went and talked with Pastor Larry about my concerns, you know, and Pastor Larry told me, well, I think they're going to get married anyway, and since they're going to get married anyway, you may as well do it. So I just, all right.
I think, I could be wrong, but I think if you'd sat me down and told me all your reservations, why you didn't want to marry me, I probably would have thought twice about it. Because I didn't have anybody coming up to me and telling me you shouldn't do this.
Yeah.
Nobody.
Well, yeah. I think it was a hard thing for me at the time because, I mean, where you were in that moment of time, you really wanted that, you know, and
Well, I've been alone all those
well, and
years.
that was the thing too. I mean, that's what I'm saying about the situation. I think that's how I was thinking about it at the time, was that, you know, she's been alone for so many years, and she's got this chance now to not be alone anymore. And I think probably more than anything, that swayed me to just, you know, let it have its chance and not make a big deal about my reservations.
And I don't remember Pastor Larry. I mean, we counseled with him for 7 months, a couple times a month, and him saying, I don't think you should get married.
Okay, so go ahead and tell us then about how the marriage went and what happened to it.
Well, Charlie's 16-year-old daughter was in drug rehab when we got married, and she got out and she came and lived with us at Mom's. We decided to live at Mom's because Mom needed the help with the yard and all that stuff. And so she came and lived with us, and that was one catastrophe after another. Keeping tabs of a 16-year-old girl that has been on drugs, it was terrible. And Charlie was on parole at the time, and for drugs, and so he was being a real good guy. But then he got off parole, and after 6 months of marriage, he had a backpack in the tool room, and I happened to be looking around for something, and I found this backpack, and I looked in there, and there was a block of marijuana that big and that thick. And I was so angry, I threw it down the toilet. And when he heard about it, he just blew his stack. I've never seen anybody so angry, and he made me pay for it. He said that he was keeping it for a friend. I was so gullible and naive. I didn't know anything about drugs or anything. And so I had to come up with the cash to give him to pay for that. And next thing you know, he comes up gone. In, I think it was December or January, he disappeared and never came home. I had you and John out looking all over the place for him. I thought he was dead on some road somewhere. And I went to work and found out the next morning that we had reported to the police that he was missing, and found out he was in jail. He'd gotten picked up for driving with alcohol, and had taken his parrot along, and the parrot, it was the middle of winter and lots of snow, and he ended up in the ditch, and the parrot, who knows what happened to it, it probably froze to death on a snowdrift, and he got put in jail, and he got his license taken away for several months, and so I had to drive him everywhere, and it was not a happy situation, but he was very, very repentant, just very, very repentant. And the whole time he was going to Bible studies with Art Fody, and the guys at church were trying to support him and be nice and help him grow in his faith, and we'd pray together, and we did everything I could think of to make him stronger in the Lord, because he was just a baby Christian, and it just, he pretty much behaved himself, but until Mom died. But Mom got sick the following November in 2002, and I took her to the hospital because she was bleeding, and anyway, Grandma was bleeding, and so I took her to the hospital, and they did tests and found out that she had a huge mass in her colon. And they had to do emergency surgery, and they couldn't get it all. And so she was in the hospital for, I don't know how long, that number of days, I suppose. And they ended up telling her that she was going to die. There was nothing they could do because they couldn't get the rest of the mass. And I remember being there that day when they told her that. And she said, I want to go home and die. So I took her home. And it was a very stressful time because, like, the night that she had that surgery, Charlie came home, and there was water on the steps coming down the basement, and he fell down the steps and broke a couple ribs. And he was in extreme pain. So we went to the hospital, of course, and they gave him some painkiller, and he was just being a real baby. And so I was running from tending to him to my job to Mom in the hospital, back and forth. It was a very high stress time because I had to tend to everybody. And it just, he was just demanding a lot of attention, and I felt so bad I couldn't be there with her, so Johanna would fill in for me and be with her. And anyway, I took her home from the hospital, and I had to work and tend to Charlie, and I would run home in between my patients and check on Mom to make sure she was okay. And I'd set her up on the couch with pudding and Ensure and all kinds of things to eat, and she had a walker, and she was able to get up and walk to the bathroom. And one day she said, I can't do it anymore, I can't walk. She was so weak, and she couldn't walk to the bathroom with her walker anymore. So I called work and I said, sorry, I have to take a leave of absence. I said, I can't come in because she can't get to the toilet anymore. So that's what I did, and I called hospice, and I had hospice come in, and they started giving her morphine, and as soon as they put her on morphine, she went to sleep. She slept for 3 days before she died. And it was just me. I knew she was gonna die that Friday, the 29th of November. And the hospice aide came to bathe her, and I said, I don't think it's necessary. She's not going to be around long. And I'd sit up nights in the chair in her bedroom, with her. And so Betty came over on her lunch hour, and she prayed around Mom's bed out loud and talked to her and stuff. And a couple of nuns came, and my cousin Pauline came, and she passed away about noon, I think it was. Yeah. And anyway, so I had to call everybody, and everybody came home, of course. And that was around Thanksgiving. So everybody was there for Thanksgiving, and we had Jim came home, and he had cirrhosis of the liver, and we thought he'd make it till Christmas, and this was the end of November. And he came home and helped me put the funeral together, and all of the boys and I got together and talked money and inheritance and stuff, and then everybody left, and Jim went home and died a week later, and so then we had to go to South Dakota to his funeral. Very, very tough time.
And also, during all this time, you changed jobs because you stopped working for the Petersons.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. I don't remember. Yeah, okay. I don't remember what month. It must have been in the spring. They wanted me to continue to work 12-hour days and to house sit and stuff when they went on trips and stuff. And I told them, I can't do that. I'm married now. I can't be, acting like a single person and being away so many hours. And we had a falling out about it. I felt really bad, but we had a falling out about it. And I stayed with them until they could find a different nanny. But that was really hard because I was really attached to Maddie, and a very emotional time. But we parted company, and yeah, I forgot about that. So then I went to work. I put an application in at St. Alexis, and I told them what kind of work I'd been doing, and I said, can you use me anywhere? And they called me up and said, we want you in home health and hospice. They obviously saw I was a caretaker and would do well there, so I was able to start my job August 13th, 2001 at home health and hospice through St. A's. And that was a very, very good thing. I mean, the Lord was really looking out for me there to find me that position. Although, I do home health and hospice now, and it was a very, very stressful, emotional time, the 6 years when Mom died and Jim died and being married to Charlie, and I didn't enjoy my job as much as I do now because I was so stressed out, wondering what Charlie was doing next, and all the stressful things that happened. I couldn't enjoy my job like I do it now. But anyway, that's what I did, and anyway,